advancing. They called it growth. This slow, deliberate erasure of the self.
She texted me late one night. She said her therapist had an idea, something that could help us grow. It was after midnight, and I remember asking what kind of idea needed to be sent so late. Her reply was swift and strange. "Labels restrict healing," she wrote. "I need you to keep an open mind." I typed back, "Marriage was my open mind." She left the message on read. No reply until the morning. At breakfast, she spoke carefully, almost as if she were reading from a script. She explained that her therapist suggested we loosen our expectations of each other to rediscover ourselves individually. I looked at her and asked, "Does rediscover mean replace?" She sighed, telling me I was being dramatic and that I needed to trust the process. That word, process, felt colder than honesty. It felt like a clinical term for something that should have been raw and human. Later that day, a long message arrived. She was explaining boundaries she confessed she had already crossed. It would only be emotional at first, she assured me. My chest tightened, but I kept my replies calm. I asked who the other person was. She said names would just complicate the healing. I told her that clarity mattered more to me than comfort. Her response hit hard. "Control is your biggest flaw." That single sentence replayed in my mind for hours. I went for a long, aimless walk, trying to untangle the knot in my stomach. When I finally returned, I knew what I had to say. I typed, "I will not agree to something that erases me." She accused me of standing in the way of her growth. I replied, "Growth that requires secrecy is decay." She didn't like that comparison. The messaging stopped. Instead, I heard the sounds of a small bag being packed. The front door closed softly behind her. That night, she texted to say she was staying with a friend. I asked which friend. Her reply was sharp. "You're interrogating me again?" I wrote back, "Transparency is not interrogation." She didn't reply. The days that followed were a blur of polite distance and forced normalcy. She was home, but not really there. She smiled at her phone more than she ever smiled at me. I started noticing new phrases in her vocabulary, a sudden, almost brittle confidence she'd never had before. I asked if her therapist knew about these changes. She shut me down, saying her therapy was private and none of my concern. That's when I quietly scheduled my own session. I sat across from a counselor who just listened, without judgment, as the whole story spilled out. When I was finished, she asked me a simple question that landed with the weight of a stone. How much of yourself have you already given up? The truth of it settled heavy in my bones. I realized in that moment that I was negotiating my own absence from my own life. A few evenings later, my wife asked if I had thought more about the arrangement. I looked at her and said, "I've been thinking about respect instead." I saw her roll her eyes, even through the video call. "Love shouldn't feel like rules," she said, exasperated. I replied, "Love without care feels like chaos." The night it all ended, she came home late. Her clothes carried a scent that wasn't hers, wasn't mine, wasn't familiar at all. She said nothing happened and everything happened, all at once. I didn't raise my voice, I just asked, "Is this the growth you wanted?" She looked at me, her eyes bright, and said she felt lighter than she had in years. I told her I felt smaller than I ever had. A vast, cold silence stretched between us. "My therapist would agree with me," she finally said. "And my therapist," I replied, "would agree with the truth." That was the end of the discussion. The next morning I packed my essentials neatly, methodically. She watched me, standing in the doorway, but didn't try to stop me. She asked if I was punishing her. "No," I said, zipping my bag. "I'm choosing myself." Her confident expression faltered, replaced by a wave of confusion. The messages started coming as soon as I left. They followed me through the week, a chaotic mix of anger, nostalgia, and blame. I only replied to discuss logistics. She accused me of abandoning the therapy work. I told her that healing cannot be forced on just one person. When we met to sign the papers, she looked tired. The artificial confidence was gone. She asked if I hated her. "Hatred needs a closeness I no longer have," I said honestly. She whispered that she never meant to lose me. "Intentions don't undo actions," I replied. Stepping outside the lawyer's office, the air felt different, clearer. I took a breath that felt deeper than any I had taken in months. When friends asked what happened, I kept it simple. I just said we wanted different definitions of love. That truth felt whole and complete. Weeks later, she sent a text saying her therapy had finally taught her a real lesson. I genuinely hoped it brought her peace, but I didn't reply. I didn't reopen that door. My nights grew quieter, steadier. I started sleeping through the night without waking up to check for messages. I learned that boundaries are not cages meant to trap someone. They are doors you choose to close to protect your own home. Love started to return to my life, but in smaller, more honest forms. The first thing that came back was respect for myself. I thanked myself for finally listening to my own voice when it mattered most. This story didn't end with revenge or dramatic confrontations. It ended with clarity and distance. I chose a life where my growth didn't cost me my dignity. That choice felt final, and it felt calm. I learned I never needed anyone's permission to protect myself. The conversation with her ended, but my own voice, the one I had lost, returned. And that was more than enough.